You've been in the tech space over 20 years as Pocket-Lint. You've met Jobs, you've met Musk, you've been following this stuff to an insane degree. And I want to know, where's it going?
30,000 products means we're tracking around about 13 billion offers.
Did you say if something was bad when you were reviewing it?
Yeah, I think you have to. One of the greatest assets that we had was trust. There's a good way of using AI and there's a bad way of AI, right? So it's the same as using a calculator when you do your maths homework at school. That sense of trying to give the publishers all the tools that they can do that, but also make sure that the reader doesn't feel they're there just to make another transaction. It's always about trust. It's about brand. And it comes down to the affiliates as well, right? It's about trusting who you're working with. And therefore, to do that, sometimes you need a relationship with them. You actually need to pick up the phone. In the future, the elements of storytelling will be more important because you can't just expect to open up a Shopify store, whack a couple of products on there, seed out a couple of links on a mass email and hope that you're going to go straight to the top of the queue. The Zuckerberg approach of move fast and break things, whether you agree with that or not, it eventually gets you where you want to go.
So you're quite used to being in the hot seat then? Whether it's overseas or you said you used to have a podcast yourself?
I used to have a podcast myself and then had done loads of stuff with BBC, Sky, CNN, Radio 4 Today, all those different programs. The stuff is sometimes it was down the barrel, to a camera in a studio. Sometimes it was like this. Sometimes you're in, it's just down the phone and you're like looking at strange things as, at the time as it's happening and they're trying,
So the down the barrel stuff, I have a new respect for anyone who's a presenter or like staring down at the camera and presenting. And James knows why. Because the first time we did a run of podcasts, Jamie and I needed to basically record what did you call it? The pilot show? Which is internal. So it's only a short one. And it's basically Jamie and I talking about the marketing of Milkshakes podcast and why we launched it and who it's for. And we're not obviously presenters.
Yeah, that's fine.
But we had to do it. And it was so bad, but he was really nice. He was like, no, that's good. We'll keep going. We'll get enough usable stuff. And it was so bad. But he actually, in the end, I think you said that it wasn't usable. We need to do it again. We need to do it again. It's something that I'd never thought about before doing it, that actually is something you have to develop, it's a mindset of just...
Yeah, I think sometimes with TV especially, and sometimes with radio, you have to be able to take something that's really complicated and put it into something that makes it really easy to understand, but you've only got about 20 seconds to do it.
Yeah.
So there's no time to ramble or things like that. Half the time when it's live, and I prefer it it's live because it said you can't go, oh, can I do that again? Yeah. There's no pressure or whatever. Yeah. So you just kind of do it and you kind of then come out the other end and go, no, I can't actually remember what I said, but I'm sure it was fine. Yeah. The producer or the guy, the guy that puts you, oh, that was great. Thanks very much. Whatever. So there's an element of if you know your stuff, then the chances are you're going to say something that's useful. Sometimes you could go, you listen to it back and go, oh, I could have been a bit more succinct, or I could have used that analogy, or I could have said this. But then it just becomes, if you start reading things, it's just that you don't get that kind of, it sounds really cliche, you don't get that kind of magic of the moment of it being there.
I would even say that about speeches within our company. So we've obviously got to get our staff together quite often. And when there's 30, 40, 50 people there, and I've got a speech or something that we've prepared, we've learned this over the last couple of years, certainly for me, if I try and follow quite a strict agenda of what I want to cover, it doesn't come across as kind of motivational or as kind of clear, as smooth as it could. Yeah. If I'm off the cuff, it's always better.
Yeah, you just got to remember every so often you kind of make notes, right? So, not notes, but just prompts. At least prompts. Yeah, I remember, on my wedding day, I basically had to give a speech to say thank you to everybody. Sat down, got a big elbow in the ribs, saying you forgot this person, that person, that person. Like, okay, hang on, everybody, great, because I'd kind of written some down, but not, just thought, oh, I'll remember it all, it'd be fine, and then obviously didn't. So, just in that moment, but I think overall,
you remembered your wife, right?
Yeah. So that was the easy thing, right? It was just the people that did the readings and things like things like that. But you just kind of forget.
But you're right. I think if you've got a solid foundation to draw from, then usually you should be okay.
Yeah. And worst case scenario, if someone asks you something, you just say that's not important. What is important, and then you just switch to something else. That's fine.
But no, thank you for making it down.
Yeah.
If you'd come on our last sprint of recordings, you would have been presented with a menu, a milkshake menu that was, do you want Oreo? Do you want Rolo? I'm so sorry.
It's fine. Banana's good. I like banana.
You've got your banana. It was a logistical nightmare, wasn't it? Because we're waiting for the guest to arrive. We've got another guest booked in, so that one needs to start at the right time. And we're waiting for a Deliveroo driver.
No stress. So
but
good.
here we have
do.
a milkshake each.
Yeah,
I've gone chocolate.
Jamie's
gone chocolate.
Yeah.
Let's have a cheers. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Cheers. I won't reach over in case I spill it. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I mean, I know you do a lot of sort of like media work anyway. So that's really interesting. We should dive into some of that. But I've got a little bit of an intro I'm going to give.
Go for it.
On Stuart Miles, who has our guest today on Marketing Over Milkshakes. And I think the way to describe you really is, and you can jump in and correct me, but is if anyone's ever bought a gadget or read a review before buying a gadget, iPhone, laptop, whatever it is, in the past sort of decade plus, sort of nearly 2 decades plus, the chances that your work has influenced their buying journey. They probably read some of your stuff because you founded Pocket-Lint back in 2023, which is a major tech, which then sold to a major tech publisher. You exited it to Valnet, and along the way, you basically have been there for every meaningful sort of tech release, from the sort of iPhone to Apple Watch and everything in between. So that's gives you, I think, quite a good unique view on technology, but also on media and publishing and actually running a publisher and the change in monetization, which then brings us into today with the affiliate world. And you've launched quite an exciting business that we actually work with already, and a lot of our clients and partners, and is causing a bit of a buzz, which is Squirrel.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to jump in and just sort of give a top-down explainer of what Squirrel is, but that might be best in your words.
Yeah. Okay. So effectively, Squirrel allows you to check prices and track offers from retailers as a publisher. So what we found at running Pocket-Lint for, as you said, 2 decades almost, was we were involved in affiliates right from the beginning, very early on. And as the site got bigger, as we started we had international editions, so we were publishing in 9 different languages simultaneously using AI, completely different story on that one. But ultimately, our audience was global. We had about 12 million readers a month. And so therefore asking the journalists who would write this story or write a buying guide or something like that to go, right, okay, you've done this, that's great. Now can you go and spend 20 minutes, half an hour, finding all the links for all the pricing. Affiliate links, all the pricing, all the retailers, work it out, where different countries, all the other stuff, suddenly added a huge amount of time. And it was fairly boring work, to be honest. And so we kind of started building this comparison engine initially for ourselves at Pocket-Lint. But the idea being is that you could start with a destination point. So at the very early days, it was a keyword. So this is a pair of Apple AirPods or something. And from there, you could put it into the system and it would go off and find the retailers that in the UK would sell that product. List them on a little widget, all automated, very, very much working at scale, not kind of the approach which was out there at the time, which was, let's spend 10 minutes building this widget. How would you like it? Would you like colors? Would you like to feature these retailers? You're like, well, that's the same thing as just finding the retailer in the first place, right? So we did that. And then what that allowed us to do was for our German audience, for example, the system would automatically realize that the reader was in Germany, would automatically go and look at German retailers and do all that work without the journalists having to do anything. We've seen quite a few of our competitors trying to solve this problem by saying, "Oh, it's £99 in the UK, it's €99, it's $110."
Just guessing.
Well, not guessing. Well, partly guessing, but also just having to go through and find prices and then just this bracket of pricing after they've mentioned the product.
Oh, so for every country they would
longer.
list. So I don't really care what it is in yen.
No, but also you're not monetizing it in all these different places. You're just putting a price that at one moment in time was roughly what it was. And for Pocket-Lint at the time, we had 20,000 people reading every month in Guatemala.
Right.
Okay. Now, I don't know what retailers there are in Guatemala, but I can't then expect a journalist who's written a really exciting story about this cutting edge thing, and that's why they're there and they're doing this. Isn't this exciting? To then spend a large proportion of their time going off and trying to find prices in different locations. And then, as we know, prices change. Things change. Retailers change stock. They don't have it in stock. They stop listing it. The retailer goes bust. It changes the wrapper. All these different things. And we were like, there's got to be there's got to be a better solution out there that still allows us to have, as a publisher, still allows us to have that direct control, that kind of direct relationship with the retailer. And turns out there wasn't. And so we started building Squirrel within Pocket-Lint and just sort of grew it. We then started showing some friends. We showed one of my friends who used to work at the Amazon affiliates team. Mm-hmm. He was like, "This is great. Like, you should have you thought about licensing this out to other publishers?" And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting idea. So we started talking to them. They were like, "This is amazing, but we're not really that happy about having Pocket-Lint on an invoice that you're sending to us, considering as you're a competitor." And so we then spun it out into a separate business, called it Squirrel. Yep. Squirrel because it's about going to the forest and finding the nuts and bringing them back, the nuts, the deals, all the other stuff, right? Bringing them back. Exactly. And then the rest, as they say, is history. And we've slowly grown over the last 4, maybe 5 years, probably properly, trying to grow and deliver much more beyond that offers capability and that, just that ability to keep up to date with the prices, to offering a whole kind of suite of tools that help publishers really try and take out some of the pain points and boringness and hassle of managing large affiliate programs.
And it's clearly the demand was there, as you said, and it's been picked up just from our perspective, running an affiliate agency representing over 80 brands ourselves. Like, we speak to a lot of publishers, and I don't know, we can name names, maybe you can, but many of the biggest publishers in the space seem to have adopted Squirrel and be rolling it out, a lot of them. And it's obviously hugely useful. I don't know if you can talk about that and also some of the numbers of how big it's become now. Yeah,
so we're on quite a few sites. We work with publishers in the UK, in Europe, in Australia, in America. Obviously always looking for more publishers. I'd be remiss to say that. Ultimately, we're trying to deliver solutions that, as I say, make their life easier, but also give them options, give them understanding of how this kind of stuff works, right? So it could be that allows us, some cases you won't even know that we're on the site, even though it's powered by Squirrel. One of the things we worked at very hard at the beginning is understanding, and some of the publishers we work with, they have brands that are very tightly controlled by licensed partners and things like that. And so it's about making sure that the widgets, if you use the widget solution that we have, the widgets look and feel a part of your site. Because the moment you start looking like it's a big ad, then readers go, hang on a minute, this is a big ad. If you're adding value and relevance, and I think that's you might hear me say that a few times in this podcast today, but it's about relevance, relevant content and relevant pricing and relevant retailers and things like that. I think if you add that, then it makes it's useful to the reader. And the reader then thinks, oh, okay, this is fine. I'm happy for this to be here. In fact, why isn't this here? Because that would be helpful in me making my decision. Because a lot of the intent content that the publishers write, this is a buying guide. These are the things that we've tested. We've spent hours testing them. We built entire studios, kitchens, living rooms to test this stuff. We spent, we get the best people in the world to write this stuff and know about this stuff. You kind of, at the end of it, you're like, okay, they've said, yes, this is great. Let me go and buy it. And then you're like, oh, there's a link to an American shop, but I'm in Colchester.
Yeah.
Like, they don't ship here or something like that. Doesn't really help, right?
Yeah.
So it's that sense of trying to give the publishers all the tools that they can do that, but also make sure that the reader doesn't feel that it's just another kind of, they're there just to make another transaction.
It sounds quite simple, but when we had the chat with you, me and Jamie, like earlier this week before the pod, you was giving us some numbers, and it's like, it actually involves you guys at the moment processing 30,000 retailer product feeds. So for those who don't know, like if you've got an affiliate program, I have a product feed that's pulled straight from whether it's a Shopify store or whatever my e-com store is. It's pulling every, detail about that product in real time as it updates. And you've got 30,000 of those feeding into your own proprietary system every 2 hours.
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time at the beginning understanding how the feeds work, where the feeds come. So we work with all the major networks, AWINs, CJs, Impacts, Trade Double, all that, all those ones you can think of. Yeah. If we haven't, we're kind of always looking to add more to that pile. We then work with retailers direct in some cases. We work with CPC networks, we work with CPA networks. You can even create a custom feed where as a publisher, you sell your own merch, you can give us that feed, you can take it from Shopify, wherever, okay? The idea being is that we pull all that data in, and the combination of either our own relationships Squirrel, we call it Squirrel Marketplace, our own relationships with retailers, or let's say allowing the publishers to have their own direct relationship with retail. My publisher background, I always like it if publishers have the power to be direct. That's always a good way to do it. You get much more cohesion, you get much more relationships. You can build other factors in and package it all up in a nice way. So we kind of spent a lot of time understanding and making sure that we can pull all those feeds in. That gets us to, at the moment, around about 30,000 feeds, retailer feeds. Some retailers have more than one feed. Some have, only like almost half a feed, so to speak. They've got, some of our feeds maybe only have 10 products on it. It doesn't change that much, but that's how it works. You've got to pull it in and it's great. Others, we have one retailer in the US that has 10 million rows in one of their feeds. Which is quite.
I can guess who that might be.
Yeah, which is quite a big thing to handle. Okay,
yeah.
And we have to process that within 2 to 4 hours. If it takes longer than that, then the system goes, well, I'm just going to start processing this again.
That must have been,
and you missed the end of it, right?
It must have been so much fun for you in the early days, just during that R&D phase, and operationally, like that must have been all consuming. But I guess now you sort of come out the other end and you've got that tech available, and
and also, but doing it in a way that's efficient, because it's very easy as to go, we'll just throw some more servers at it, that'll be fine. Yeah. And then you kind of look at your AWS bill at the end of the month and say, okay, we need to charge a lot more for this, right? Yeah. And so our goal is really, from a charging perspective, is to try and, obviously charge accordingly, but to make it so it's approachable for teams, large and small, to be able to afford to do this. But ultimately, it's, some of them, I remember when we first started, we got really excited that we've got a feed that had 85,000 products in it. We were like, yes, we've managed to do this in like 1 hour 59. This is great. We just, hit it on the thing. And then you say 10 million come along and you're like, okay, let's see how we work this out. As it is, that 85,000 now is down to about 3 minutes, right? So that just kind of gives you the progress that we've made over that time through efficiencies. But 30,000 products means we're tracking around about 13 billion offers.
So you guys know the price of a lot of things in real time per country. If it's out of stock?
If it's out of stock, if it's the price of it, when the price changes, if it's a refurb product. We've got a lot of data from the feeds that allows us to understand and give that information where they have access to the publishers. So the publishers, the way that the networks work, and I think this is really clear to make this, to spell this out, so to speak, is that the publishers that work with us have access to a number of feeds. As an affiliate, if you're listening to this and you're an affiliate marketing person, you're like, I haven't approved them on my program. How dare they have my feed? We only give the publishers that have access to those feeds.
Right.
So they, through most of the networks, we get an API request that comes through that tells us exactly which retailer that publisher has access to, and then we can start processing the feeds and their connections. It's their connection ultimately on their behalf. So it kind of gives it this, as a business, we have a very big overview of what happens, but the individual publishers only get to see the access that they have access to.
Yep.
And I think that's important, because sometimes, you don't, as an affiliate manager, you don't necessarily want everybody to be on your program, because the brand doesn't fit. Now, we only work with editorial publishers, so the majority of our publishers all kind of are working on, those. It's not really a brand issue, but you could see, and I think the industry is always worried about placement, about where they are, about who has access.
Well, the big problem with sub-networks in general, and technically, it feels wrong to call you guys this, but you're a sub-network. Is that right? From the merchant's perspective, it's like you guys would, if you were to be categorized as a publisher type, you're not voucher, you're not content.
It's hard. We kind of see ourselves as obviously a tech partner. We like to be, when we're working and allowing the publisher to work direct, we like to be seen as visible, even to the editorial teams, because we try and reduce all the pain points there. But when we're talking to the likes of AWN and things like that, we have to tick we're a sub-network box.
Yeah.
We have an element of sub-networkiness with our Squirrel Marketplace, where proposition, where I said we have the relationship with the retailer. Some of the publishers we have, they don't want to have relationships with everybody. Sometimes the contracts take too long. Sometimes they want to focus on the really big clients. They want someone like us to handle the long tail for them. And so we do fall into that sub-network bundle. But we always, without getting into trouble, we always are remiss of like, well, I suppose we are a sub-network, but we don't really kind of calling ourselves that because there does seem to be this industry sort of appetite for kind of putting sub-networks in a box. And maybe that's right. Sometimes I don't think it is right. So
they do a lot of dodgy stuff though, or their publishers do, using their tech. So that's why they've got a bad name. But you guys, I don't think I would describe you as a sub-network, but the way the categories are set right now, you obviously would be.
Tech partner that does something innovative and not heard of before is not normally a box we get to tick.
No. And what is your relationship with the networks like? Because clearly, if you're a tech partner, there's some level of, or high level of relationship there and partnership there. How much work do you do together with them?
A lot of the time, it's we work with the publisher, and so the publisher normally has that relationship.
Got it.
That's not to say that we're hands off. We always try to be as open and approachable as possible, and so we do have relationships with the big players, so to speak. Could those relationships be better? Probably. And that's not necessarily an animosity between us. It's just that we kind of are busy solving problems and trying to create new things and exciting stuff. And sometimes we understand that we are a one player, very, very large game that is, with lots of moving pieces. So from that perspective, I think, we're happy with where we are, but we'd always, wouldn't it be lovely if all the networks said, "Oh, we think your technology is amazing. Let's work out how we can really integrate it into everybody that uses to make sure everybody uses it." Then, yeah, of course, I'm going to say that's great. Let's go.
That's probably only a matter of time. From logically. But yeah, I mean, going back to when you sort of were built and running Pocket-Lint, I think that's really interesting because I don't know if do you know this, but when I was working at a native ad network many years back, over 10 years ago, actually. I think I picked you guys up as a publisher partner, or we had some work together, and you were really good quality traffic, because obviously I think we're selling some clicks off of your site, and you obviously it makes sense because you've got you've got quite a specific. I mean, how would you describe the audience of a Pocket-Lint back then?
So we were obviously consumer technology. We were news and reviews. So we kind of looked at the entire product life cycle. So, everything from we've heard this rumor that it's coming to we're now getting ready for the launch, to the hands-on, to the review, to then that kind of after the fact of saying, right, you've got this thing, how do we maximize the opportunities for you to use it and get the most out of it and all the other stuff. And then it comes back around again of like, oh, the new one's coming out. Like we've heard, let's get excited for that. Because of the way that we approached it, we always used to say that our mantra was to inform and entertain on the tech that matters. Okay, so our content had to be informative, it had to be entertaining, but it had to always be about tech. We didn't at the time, get lost in that like best mattresses and all those kind of things. So we stuck very much in our
cash grabs.
No cash grabs from that point of view. But it also had to matter. So they were kind of this, if it's great, and you've heard about it, we'll write about it. If it's great and you haven't heard about it, we'll write about it. But if you've never heard about it and it's rubbish, then we're not going to bother wasting your time telling you about.
Do you know Marcus Brownlee? I can't remember his name, but the guy.
Yeah, Marcus Brownlee. Yeah,
he's his name. Yeah, he's got a great channel. It's one of the biggest, right?
Yeah.
And I follow him on YouTube, but I find it really interesting because it must be such a dance for him. And I wonder if you had this too or not. But like, if something comes out from, Apple, and it's just absolute garbage, or he feels it's bad. I noticed his videos, he does do it, but he'll approach you very carefully and respectfully because he wants to be let into the next event. He doesn't want to be blacklisted by them. So how did you balance that? Did you say if something was bad when you were reviewing it?
Yeah, I think you have to. So one of the greatest assets that we had, and I think above and beyond quite a lot of other sites that were out there at the time, was trust. And, we actually went as far as working with a nonprofit organization called the Trust Project that used to make sure that there was decent efficacy within journalism, trust values. We used to have clear markers about the ownership, about how we did our work, about even how we categorize the stories and all these things. And this leads back to affiliates, right? So if I am as a journalist, turn around and say, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing in the world. It's like a milkshake. Let's just say this milkshake's the best thing in the world. You need to go and buy this. I'm going to tell you to buy it. Here's a link to go and buy it. It's brilliant. And you drink it and you go, oh my God, that is like the most disgusting thing I've ever laid my hands on. This is horrid. You're then never going to trust my opinion or my thought again. And you probably won't come back, right? Because you're like, oh, I went to Stuart. He told me it was great. It's rubbish.
Isn't that what most influencers are doing today?
It's kind of very much rage baity. It's kind of polarizing. It's kind of great for, this is how you make a cup of tea. You put warm water in and you put a tea bag and then you put it in the microwave and you're like, no, that's not. And so that's kind of where we're sometimes seeing that at the moment.
It drives engagement because it's novel.
But it drives engagement, but not necessarily the right engagement. Our approach was always, well, look, maybe this product isn't, I'm testing it, I don't get it. So maybe it's not for me, but I'll tell you why it's not for me. And this is the person I am, and this is what I do like. And so you can decide for yourself whether, if you think you like the same things that I like, and then you're also going to find this awful. But if you actually turn out and, this is a banana milkshake, let's go back to that, right? So it turns out I don't like bananas. Well, chances are I'm not going to like this. Right, but if I tell you that I don't like bananas at the beginning before drinking a banana milkshake, then at least you've hopefully got the intelligence to go, well, he didn't really like that. So, and I do, so maybe I will. I think it's about, we used to obviously have very good relationships with a lot of companies, all at what we've called tier 0, tier 1, kind of, top flight.
Big tech,
but also we were kind of one of the first people that would get it. Most of the time we'd get the products before they'd even been announced. Pre-embargoes, pre-briefings, or if it was like Apple, for example, we'd always be on the first run of, I'd always have an iPhone before they released to the public. From that point of view,
how long before do you think?
10 days.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was a big release.
Yeah, well, that's like major iPhones. We'd always get it pre-seeded, so we could play with it for a week, write about it, and then it would come out. And then from that point of view, so I think there's a sense of they'd always say to us that if we gave them a 4, like out of 5 stars, if we gave them a 4-star, but were fair and constructive and not rage baity, not like, oh, this is rubbish just because it is, then that's far more valuable to them than the carte blanche, oh, it's Apple, it's got to be 5 stars.
What if you gave them 3 stars?
If it's 3 stars, again, if it's justified, then that's fine, right? And we'd give some things 2 stars, 1 star.
And you would still
get invited back.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's important to, if you weren't doing a good job at work and everybody just went, oh, you're amazing, Gary, this is great. There's no feedback, right? You can't improve. You can't get better. You'd be like, everybody thinks I'm brilliant. This is great. It's not useful to anybody.
I know some people like that. Actually, yeah, that's interesting.
So I think it's about trust, right? It's always about trust. It's about, and I think, it's about brand and it comes down to the affiliates as well, right? It's about trusting who you're working with. And therefore, to do that, sometimes you need a relationship with them. You actually need to pick up the phone or you need to meet them and say, hey, great, oh, you're actually a real person. This is novel. This is fine.
Well, before you launched Squirrel, how involved had you been in the traditional affiliate space and in the industry that you're now so involved with? Like, how aware of it were you?
We'd obviously worked in the affiliate space for a long time.
Yeah.
We had a really good affiliate director at Pocket-Lint. We were lucky who brought us on and made it a bit more professional, so to speak,
cool.
On that side of things. So I was aware of it. I wasn't as embedded as I am now. And a lot of the things that we kind of work with, maybe because of my publishing background, we obviously work with editorial publishers because we kind of understand the pain points that they're going through. We understand that pressure. And rather than kind of coming at from a cold-blooded kind of, let's just make as much money as we possibly can and rinse everybody while we're going through, and burn all the bridges as we're going over them. That's not my approach. It's never been my approach.
Do you remember how much of your revenue was affiliate at its peak?
At its peak, we probably were doing about 25%
affiliate revenue. That's interesting. And do you think that, my assumption is that since then, when did you sell it again? It was
in
2022.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be probably around the 25% you were talking about. It's only going to go up. It's only going up, right? Because
but it's one of those things where I think some publishers don't see that. Some publishers will still try and do the programmatic race to the bottom. Some publishers will look at different, let's see.
Can you explain that, the programmatic race to the bottom for those who don't understand?
So it's the idea of if you're buying ads based on page impressions and based on the cost per 1,000.
Yep, CPM.
Then if you keep on chucking more and more ads on the page because everything else is dwindling, then the price of that CPM is going to continue to go down. And if you don't have engaging content and you've gone for the click mantra, like let's just try and see how many pages we can get out of this, it's not engaging content.
Like galleries, you mean?
Yeah, it's when I've been in the industry 20 odd years, from publishing point of view, I've seen the cycles all the way through, right? So there was one point where it's like, let's paginate this review to 15 pages.
So I remember that was during the sort of native days, that I was kind of in and around, and I don't see that much anymore. And I'm guessing that Google ads basically penalizing that.
It's time on page, right? It's engagement. If you come off a Google, it used to be that if you came off a Google search and you dropped on a page and you've read that page and then you click onto the next page and you click on it couldn't work out that you were still on the site, but you'd gone through multiple pages, right? Because it looks at the overall analytics and says, well, nobody's paying, they're only spending 20 seconds on this page. Surely that can't be great content. If you turn around, and we used to have an approach where it was all about engagement. So we used to paginate at one point and then we were like, this is silly. This is getting silly now. And it was all because let's just serve more ads, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can get more engagement, then the readers that you do have are more engaged in your content. They're more influential. They're kind of, you've got a better chance of actually giving them something to read that they stick around and read. And then guess what? They want to come back and read more. Right?
I'd never made that connection before, even though I've been in publishing and performance marketing so long. But yeah, that change in programmatic monetization from most publishers, it does coincide with affiliate becoming a more important revenue stream and becoming more sophisticated, because like you said, it's all about actually keeping them on the page because they're engaged, not because you're forcing them through a maze of artificial inflating the pages they can serve ads on. And therefore, the more you can engage the user and get their trust, and we've got a point on this here about trust, which you've spoken about, then the easier it is to recommend your affiliate links or recommend products and have links for those products and actually get paid off the back of that.
Yeah. I mean, a really good example, right? If your best friend was in the bar with you and he recommends giving some money to charity, you've known him for years and you're probably going to go, yeah, I'll give you 20 quid. That's fine. Right? You come out of the station, there's a charity guy there going, hey, have you got 2 minutes? You're like, I don't know you. Who are you? Like, I'm not going to give you any money. That's ridiculous. Because you haven't built any relationship with that guy. Mm-hmm. You haven't built any trust. But your best friend who's saying, I've seen this thing, we should give money to it. You're like, yeah, I'm in for that. That's great. Because you trust that he's done some of the homework for you. And it's exactly the same with the reader and the publisher. It's that sense of the publisher, will do that stuff. And if they can build that level of trust with people, and sometimes that's instant, sometimes it takes a long time. But, if you build that level of trust, you're more likely to understand and resonate with what that person is talking about, that publisher is talking about. And therefore, the chances are that you're going to get better results and better responses.
Do you think that we hear it a lot, that sort of traditional, maybe not traditional, but traditional digital PR, is that a thing? But PR as a whole is maybe getting it's getting its toes trodden on quite heavily and kind of being sort of eaten up a lot by performance or commerce content, which was what we're talking about, and the affiliate linking, and that being sort of more and more publishers are monetizing more pages and more articles with affiliate links as standard now, that there's less room for sort of traditional PR.
No, I don't think so. I remember being told quite a long time ago that they wouldn't, a publisher friend I was talking to said, and this was way before Squirrel, was basically saying they were getting to a point where they wouldn't write about something unless they had an affiliate relationship with that retailer, or they could make money from the link.
Yes.
So it's a case of basically everybody go out and get an affiliate partnership with somewhere to do that. I think it's that thing of ultimately saying that publishers are under a huge amount of stress at the moment with either Google's zero-click internet approach, with AI making it easy to churn out copy, and you can see that the publishers we work with all have very strong brands. They all have readerships that are kind of resonating with what they're saying, because they're not, we don't get that copy anymore of like, what time's the Super Bowl on? Or things like that, right? We used to, how to take a screenshot on the iPhone, perennial fantastic performer, but that probably doesn't really happen anymore because you just ask AI to how do you do that, right?
Right.
Well, there's like 58 YouTube videos on how to do that for you. So I think it's that sense of you're going to see publishers continue to work out how to monetize thing. Affiliate is a less offensive way than shoving yet another 3 minutes of ads, or do this and click. That sort of Netflix cliffhanger approach to paragraph writing, where it's like, and then you'll never guess what they're going to launch next. 3 ads later. And then they went more 3 ads, that kind of thing. So I think we've got to a point where readers are getting savvy enough and they're like, you know what? No, this is too much. And so if you can do that, if you can introduce new monetary, new revenue streams without hurting the audience, but also giving them a value add, as I talked about at the beginning of that, well, maybe it is price comparison. Here's the cheapest place to do it. Or here's some retailers we've curated for you that we think you should be buying it from because we've gone and checked them out or what have you. Then I think that's helpful for the publisher, but it's also helpful for the reader. And that's the key thing.
Yeah. And that's what that's what really brought us together was, I won't name them, but we've got a large sort of home electronics client at RevWise that's perfect for Squirrel, working with Squirrel publishers and having their feeds in your product. And it isn't a hard sell. I've seen the articles that they're appearing in that they're driving sales from. And it is just, some of them might be review articles about different washing machines, but then you have by the way, while you're here, here's the real-time prices and different places to buy this product.
Yeah, I think the moment that those kind of retailers win, using like being part of Squirrel from a publishing point of view, is that it's going back to lazy. Look, I used to be a journalist, so I can call some journalists lazy, okay? We like writing about cool things. We don't necessarily like doing all the paperwork that goes with it. That's the politically correct way of probably saying that, okay? So ultimately, if push comes to shove, if it's really easy for me to link to Amazon, I'm going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. The Amazon system is, they sell lots of things. I used to work for Amazon. They used to sell a lot of things, right? They made it very easy for you to, from an affiliate point of view, the wrapper that they put on is very easy to understand. It's not hard. All the other stuff, you go from there. The chances are that if a journalist can find it on Amazon, they'll stick a link on it. It's done, right? They don't have to think about it.
Oh yeah,
the price won't be right, but it just goes to Amazon. Great, they're bound to sell it at some point. Yeah, whatever. Let's move on, right? If you're a small retailer, an independent retailer, not Amazon, basically, then trying to convince the journalist at that moment in time to remember you, that you might possibly sell it, or it's an edge case, and so could they look at the website and find out whether you do and all the other stuff, unfortunately, it's just not going to happen unless there's some intervention in place. And so by using Squirrel, they can give us the URL, because now it's more than just a keyword, it's a URL. You just give us a URL that we've got on our system, we can find it, start matching up. And then all of a sudden, where you were originally just linking to Amazon, now they can link to, lots of different retailers. And sometimes if Amazon don't even sell it, then we'd link to the main retailer anyway, or the direct, or what have you. And so it kind of then starts playing into helping the retailers, the merchants understand, getting listed when, previously they wouldn't have had a hope in hell, which is sad to say, but they wouldn't have had a hope in hell to be able to get on that page unless they were at that moment in time remembered. Yeah. And then the link was worked out, because that's a whole nother problem, right? Where
the amount of times,
are all just
or the product's out of stock because it's a hard link. So the amount of times we take over an affiliate program for a brand and we go in and we audit them on day one, and a lot of the links in there, bet they got some amazing articles that are highly trafficked, and then the link's dead.
Or it's it's from a publisher's point of view, they were at one network and then they've moved to another network.
Yeah, right? That could cause a dead link, or the product page is moved.
Or the product's moved. Or
the amount of money that has been, it's impossible to calculate, but you can kind of get a ballpark. Probably the amount of sales that have been lost.
Yeah. If I was a brand, this would be music to my ears. We know that there are fighting factions within brands or companies with the Amazon affiliate team versus the D2C team. So,
I don't blame the journalists because it is, no one likes admin, and they're obviously doing what they're there to do, which is the content.
Look, you got into running RevWise because you wanted to make a difference somewhere. You didn't get in it to do the accounts on a Friday night and reconcile.
Yeah, we find ourselves here every day.
But that's the important things you have to do, right? But there's if you could offload that to make that easier, then you'd be like, yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. And over the years, when I first started writing, it's like, let's file 300 words. That's it. Done. Thanks very much. Let's move on. Now it's like, right, file 300 words. You got to take hands-on pictures. You got to affiliate it up. You got to do the socials. You got to, suddenly that list has grown massively. And yet the journalists in the office have shrunk. The editorial teams have gone down in size, and yet they're just, that'll be fine. It's only another 10 minutes. That's another 10 minutes.
And they're going down further because of AI now?
I think they're going down further because of just, the publishing industry is continuing to constrict from that point of view. AI, the AI isn't necessarily affecting, it's easy to say we're all doomed because of AI. But I think that the bigger publishers are starting to use AI in a very constructive way.
Some of them are leaving M dashes in there.
They are, or is that copy okay, or what have you, right? But I think it's that, it's when you're asking it to write everything for you, and you're not checking it and making sure that's there's a good way of using AI, and there's a bad way of AI, right? So it's the same as using a calculator when you do your maths homework at school. There were ways that you could use it to speed up the process of multiplication, or there were ways that you could do it and you'd come out with a completely wrong answer, right? So it's understanding that technology and how to use that, and using it in effective ways rather than just thinking it's going to solve everything and be the silver bullet that means you don't have to do any work anymore. That's not going to happen for a long time.
So you're right now you're in the tech space with Squirrel, and would it be classed as like the SaaS? You've got a SaaS model there as well with Squirrel, and you've come from such a traditional sort of industry, this journalistic merit and trust and relevancy. What are the key differences do you think there are between those two worlds? I mean, I'm sure you still keep a hand in that world with various other things that you do. But yeah, what are the main two or the main differences, would you say?
I think it's just... I think ultimately it's where obviously I've come from a world of following tech companies. So although I've been a journalist in a traditional sense, and I originally started at the Times of London, all that kind of stuff, right?
As a journalist,
and actually as a designer as well. I used to lay out papers and things like that, but at one point in my career. But it's that because my interest is technology, I've been very fortunate enough to cover like life-changing, industry-changing sort of moves and plays across that time. So, it's everything from the rise of wearables to the rise of 3G, 4G, 5G, games consoles, electric cars, all tablets, smartphones, all that kind of stuff. You kind of not only have seen that technology change everything, but the companies that I've been interviewing and talking to and having relationships over that time have been obviously more forward thinking than a lot of them, perhaps someone that runs a wine business, right? Or someone that's, runs a more traditional sort of commerce business, so to speak. That said, through all of that time and through this time, I still believe that the core values of being a nice guy and running a business for the long term and, kind of not stepping on people on the way up because you might need them on the way down is kind of strikes through. So I don't think, there are in every industry, right? There are going to be people and businesses that you're like, wow, we shouldn't really work with them because they're a bit shady or a bit shifty or whatever, right? And then there's going to be some other amazing businesses that have just got it and they understand it and they are trying to make a difference as well. And so I think as long as you, this is maybe a naive approach, but as long as you stick to the good guys and steer clear of those that you think, you know what, I don't think I can trust those people.
I think that's great advice.
You're fine.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. It all comes down to intentions at the end of the day, and that's very transparent. Humans can detect that a mile off. So, yeah, I agree.
I was going to take a different path because I'm just curious, and you've just reminded me, like I'm a bit of a tech nerd myself, but I like to think of myself as a bit of an early adopter,
right?
Which has cost me a lot of money in shit products. But I'm not as bad as I've got a friend of mine who just buys everything from Kickstarter and he's got the most ridiculous products ever. But it's fun, it's exciting, and obviously I'm sure you agree with that yourself. But you obviously we were talking before. I mean, you've literally asked questions of Elon Musk, right? Steve Jobs. You've been in these bullpens, is it called, or where the journalists?
Yeah, I mean, it's I met Musk when they launched the Tesla Model S in the UK. It was a very small event over in South London, and he was actually giving the cars the first 5 sets of keys out to the first 5 owners that had bought this £100,000 car that was like nothing else that anybody had created at that point. I think the main electric car before that was the Nissan Leaf, right? It was the first version, not the second version. So it was kind of a big change.
The Tesla was a huge leap.
Yeah.
Huge leap, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so that was very much, there was about 10 of us, very Citizen Kane-like. He was standing there in a suit. We're all fighting about a foot away from him to get our voice recorders, and not even phones, our voice recorders into his face to be able to ask him a question, getting feisty and argumentative within the pack. So like, you've asked that question already. Shut up. I want to go.
Good question.
Kind of thing like that. So, from that, and that was very, he's kind of fulfilled and lived that kind of, world's richest man kind of mantra, and only kind of leaning into that more and more. Others are very calm and collected.
What was Jobs like?
Jobs, I was very fortunate enough to see Jobs present a number of Apple devices over the years. I was there for the 2007 iPhone launch.
Oh, that's
in
iconic.
San Francisco. I remember, again, being part of a very small group of people that he came over to launch the 3GS, I think it was, or 3G, and they held a very intimate press event at the top of the Apple store in Regent Street. There used to be a theatre at the back with about 30, 40 seats. And so I was there and got to ask him a question. And he kind of was very collected, very poised, very posed, thought about the question, and then answered it. But it was, in all that time and the time of watching him do a number of keynote speeches, is, all these videos that you always see on LinkedIn and socials and all those kind of thing, that was very much the man. He was very bright, very clever, but very kind of not kind of bouncing around like a crazy man. This is what's going to happen, this is how it's going to work, and all the other stuff.
Yeah, and so the stuff that I see again on social is probably the same clips that you see around Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, and others. It's like the ability to like ruthlessly drown out noise and prioritize on their sort of roadmap or their next task that they need to complete to get shit done.
I think, and I work, having been a founder, I'm a founder myself, as you are, and I work with a lot of founders as well outside of Squirrel, as part of our networking group that I'm a part of, and those people that you come across, there's key traits that you can see very clearly with them, and whether they're good traits or not, is you can see them, right? And there's that ability. I think there's two I kind of regularly see. One is the ability to make a decision, and go with that decision, whether it's the right decision or not. Is the ability to right. It's even just like when you get a bunch of founders going for a beer. They come out of one place, and normally, if you're not with founders, everybody's sitting around. Where should we go? I don't know. What do you think? Well, maybe we go there. Maybe we go there. What about there? Well, Bob says that place. Oh, I think it's a decision. You come out with go out with a bunch of founders, and it's like, right, there's a pub. We're going there. I've already ordered the drinks. Oh, right. Great. I've got this drink. Thanks very much. It's like, it's done. I don't really like this drink. Well, I'll just drink it and have another one. It's not a wealth thing. It's just it's a just get on with it thing. Yeah. And then the second trait, and I think this is also a good one, is that, and it'd be interesting to see whether you guys think this as well, is that it's the ability to continue to move forward. So, we all have bad days, we all have bad weeks, we all have decisions that go against us, and it's that ability to go, oh well, never mind, and then you have an energy, you have for some reason, the energy to just push on.
Yep.
Where, again, I think because the majority of time being a founder is people saying no. Because you're just trying to constantly do things. No.
Like, handling disappointment as well.
And so it's just that sense of trying to continue to keep moving forward. And there are lots of people that aren't founders that also have that skill set, right? But I think I see it more in founders, that ability just to take a bad decision and just move on with it.
Yep.
Yeah. And like water off a duck's back.
Yeah, and I think if you don't have that innately, it's something you could probably learn as well, just by going through the motions. I think maybe that's how I would identify myself. I may have not had that initially before I was a founder, but a co-founder, but like certainly now, after going through the motions so many times and knowing that you can't make everybody happy, you just got to keep moving forward, and you can't always just settle. And you can definitely sort of hone that.
Yeah, and what you were just saying as well just reminded me of this didn't come from a founder. It came from an elderly, she's now passed away, bless her, but my great aunt Ruth, who was like a grandparent to me. I didn't have any other grandparents alive, so she was like the grandma to me and my brothers. And she had a phrase that she would always say, which was when something goes bad in life, accept, adapt, and advance. So she say the 3 A's, and I think that's
a great quote.
It's a great quote. The 3 A's: accept, adapt, and advance. And I think the founders do that. Good founders do that, and they do it quickly. It's like every day. If that hasn't gone
I mean, you can look at some of these big tech companies, right? They've tried to launch things, it hasn't worked, but then they don't sort of hold on to that. They just go, okay, fine. What didn't work? Let's pivot it slightly because maybe it'll work next time. Let's try and work out how we get it better and bolder, and just keep moving. The Zuckerberg approach of move fast and break things. Just whether you agree with that or not, it eventually gets you where you want to go. Right? It's just
these cliches are. They're cliches. They've stuck around been repeated for a reason, aren't they?
Yeah, and sometimes sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We try not to break that much at Squirrel.
Fail fast is another way of saying that, right? I like that one. Fail fast.
Yeah, our development approach at Squirrel is more about building product, building stuff and things like that. It's building in phases. So we kind of create an MVP. We work out how that works. Right, we like that, it's good, let's move on to the next stage. It's working, let's move on. Right, that isn't working. Why is it not working? Maybe we've turned down a wrong road. We've invested some money in this, but if it's not working, it's not working. Let's pull back and we'll go the way that is working, So
I've got a cliche for that as well, which is imperfect action beats perfect inaction.
Yeah.
It's just perfect is the enemy of great. There's so many, but
I mean, you can go to town forever. There must be thousands of posters in your office.
There's no posters of these quotes in our office. We have a wall of fame with sort of a lot of our clients, campaigns on there just to sort of remind us who we're working for, and it's very colourful as well. But yeah, that there's a trope or a sort of cliche for all of these, and I really do think it's and we speak to a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs, and it's the themes are so consistent, and that's for a reason. There's a science to this. So it's interesting to hear you say that. But yeah, so I went there because I'm interested, and I think you're more than qualified to give your view, by the way, as humble as you are.
Hopefully.
Well, you've been in the tech space over 20 years as Pocket-Lint. You've met Jobs, you've met Musk, you've been following this stuff to an insane degree. And I want to know, this is your opinion, where's it going? Because I've been saying for a while now, as a VR nerd who had the first PSVR and all this stuff, that phones will go. I'm not the only person saying this, obviously, but like phones will eventually go, and it'll be AR, augmented reality. So, we might be sitting at dinner and I go, hold on one second, I've just got a text, and I'm just, which is a weird thought, looking into the distance. Or we might all project something onto the table that we're all looking at that stays on the table and looks like it's really there. Just saying this for those who don't understand what AR is. But then Apple Glass came out, and obviously...
Amazing experience. Nobody wanted it.
No one wants it, but it is big.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just that though.
Yeah, I tried that a couple of years ago. Again, way before it came out. And it was mind-blowing, the capabilities and the technology. I think in some of this stuff, in some of these devices, and some of these big plays overall, is that we're getting to a point where the technology is there, but the appetite and the understanding of it from a general populace isn't. So, an AR VR is a fantastic example of that. So it's a case of, we could all be walking around with big headsets on our head, embracing ourselves in virtual worlds and all the other stuff. As any dystopian sci-fi movie, from Johnny Mnemonic to Symbians to all these different movies, would have you believe, right? Ready Player One, all that kind of stuff.
Great film.
Or we're seeing now more so than ever this approach of trying to be present and more present in the things that we do. And so it's a case of turning off those technologies. It's that idea of people still wearing traditional watches, right? Because they don't want something buzzing on their arm. Or they've had 15 odd years of tracking their, I like to call quantified self. And that you don't necessarily need that for everybody. Right. And so you kind of, I think you'll start to see technology moving more into niche places. You can already see that within the fitness, like wearable place. You've got like devices like Whoop and things like that, which are kind of, designed specifically for, sports professionals to be able to really monitor what's going on. And, does does someone that sits on the sofa all the time, do they really need to quantify their daily walks? Now, you could argue that helps people get off the sofa and they're completing the rings and things like that, and they've gone through that process. But it's that sense of sometimes it's data for data's sake, and that's not necessarily best thing for everybody. And therefore, not having a device on your arm or not having a pair of glasses that tells you you're getting a text as you're walking, whatever, will be what people want. You can see there's a huge resurgence in vinyl. There's a huge resurgence in cassette tapes.
So you think technology is going to a place where the devices are going to become less, the devices will become more streamlined, and maybe, there's this talk about AI basically being able to be when AI gets better and better, there could be no interface because the AI is sort of working like
you're down. If you keep on the sci-fi movies approach, you've got Her with Joaquin Phoenix, you've got Jarvis from Iron Man, you've got these kind of even classic crazy TV shows like I think Fringe, where they had the earrings that would tell you things and things like this. So I think there is a sense of that devices will get more specific at a task. You can see that already. Kindle. For all the technology, we could all have tablets, we could all have iPads and all the other stuff, right? But no, people still love reading on a Kindle because it's digital. It's people still read books, right? But you've got headphones that are very specific at noise cancelling, or headphones that are very specific for running. I mean, how many pairs of headphones do you own?
I've got one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got a pair for like phone calls. I've got a pair for running. I've got a pair for flying. I've got all these specific, because one could all do them, but actually I prefer some elements to some and other things like that, right? So there's, you've got more specific elements to them. And I think with AI, you can see that, Johnny Ive has teamed up with Sam Atwell from, OpenAI. They're going to build something. The suggestion is either an earphone that's, very much like Her, that talks to you, or it could be a little pebble that you see that you put on the desk to record your conversation.
Johnny Ive was the guy who designed the original iPhone?
Johnny Ive's the original Apple designer, yeah. Been iPhone, Apple Watch.
So he's teamed up with OpenAI, ChatGPT owners to make a device, but it won't be a phone?
We don't know.
And so if it's an earpiece...
a companion device. That's kind of implied.
So this is kind of what I was getting at, really. Like, where do you think it's going? And it sounds like that's where you think it might be going.
Yeah, I mean, my guess will be it'll either be an earpiece because you can wear it, or it'll be a little stone. I would love it if they've made a little stone that you put on the table, and then it just records the conversation. People won't really remember it's there. You can then summarize your meetings, all the other stuff. Walk on.
Well, how's that going to look though? Like, if it really takes off, is it going to become like a thing? Like, everyone get off your stones. Like, I'm trying to watch a movie, my wife's on a stone. Can you put the stone down for 5 minutes?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's that thing of, if it's a headphone, then obviously it can talk to you. That's fine. It depends on how a companion device it will be. But I think, obviously AI is going to have a huge impact, not only in the workplace, but also the way that our technology works or is understanding. We're using, we kind of, it's that sense of, you can see it in development, in devs, you can see it in writing, you can see it in things like this, where it's that trying to understand big swathes of data to make sense of things, right? And so if that allows to have better understanding of sleep for sleep technology, right? Because at the moment, a great example I always find funny is that you've got these sleep devices, right? You've got Aura rings, you've got mattresses that tell you when you're sleeping, and all these different things, right? And then you wake up and it's like, oh, you've had a bad night's sleep. It's like, well, I know I've had a bad night's sleep, right? I feel groggy. I feel like, why? Like, you don't need to tell me that. Like, give me why or how or whatever. Other data that's actually relevant and useful to me. And it's that I think we're still not there yet. But with AI, with devices, that need and that urgency, they will have to get more intelligent.
That's what Whoop claims to do, though, isn't it? That's what Whoop claims to do, right? Is to help you optimize your sleep. But if it goes to the stone or the earpiece, right, over the next decade, and we just, let's say I put the earpiece in and I say, hey, we're looking for dinner tonight. We're going for dinner. There'll be 3 of us. We're going with Stuart. What do you think he's going to like? Somewhere in London. Go and pick it and book it for me. Something like that, right?
You can do that already. I did it a couple of weeks ago. But
if the phone goes away and all of our commerce happens on I'm struggling to see it, but I know that it makes sense. Then and again, it's something I haven't thought about that much, but what happens to the purchase journey? Obviously, we know this clickless checkout is a big topic right now, but if the phone completely goes away, like even more so than the clickless fear, what happened? What does Squirrel look like in that scenario? What does even our business? We run affiliate programs that operate on a cookie and a transaction or a server integration where the user actually has to go in there and do a certain behavior for that sale to count. Have you thought about that much?
Yeah, all the time.
What's your? I'm interested on your.
So I think there's a sense of when I've. How do I date myself without dating myself? When I worked at Amazon, when it was a plucky startup, 26 years ago, and they only sold books, CDs, and DVDs. The whole premise of Amazon was that, and they probably won't like me saying this, but it's so long ago that it's fine. The whole premise was that it was fantastic for buying boring things. Okay? You know what a book looks like. You know what a CD looks like. Mm-hmm. You know what a DVD looks like, right? The return rate's not going to be huge because chances are you're buying a CD because you want the music on it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think with that kind of AI commerce initially, it will go that way. You'll use it to buy boring things.
Yep.
It's kind of like Amazon tried it later on with those push buttons.
Yeah, we even had one of those. Yeah, right. for soap or something. But you're saying for commodities.
For commodities. Because nobody really wants to buy toilet roll or dishwasher tablets. Like, life's too short to be standing in the supermarket aisle or, unless you've got that on a subscription on something or whatever, right? You don't want to waste time. So the trust value, and this comes back to that trust question again, right? The trust value of you saying to an AI or saying to a device or saying to something, it's the same with dishwasher detergent I buy every week or every couple of months or whatever. Can you just order me some more? That's done, right? That's easy. Yep. You won't, it's unlikely to get it wrong. Because it's an obvious thing. Are you currently going to trust AI to buy something that you want to feel emotionally attached to and really care about? It's hard, isn't it?
I'd have to go to AI, for me personally, I'd have to go to it a little later in my purchasing journey, to your point. I'd have to already know roughly what I want to buy.
Right. So at that point, and you can see this with Apple stores and things like that. I've done it for a long time. Apple stores are destinations. They aren't necessarily, the Currys as well. They're not rack 'em, stack 'em. They are like, you go in there like, is there any products that I can buy?
Showroom.
It's a showroom, right? Yeah. So it's a playroom even, right? The chance to play with things. And, you can see people in there just using the computers to check their email because they're on holiday or whatever, right? So, from that perspective. So I think it's about making sure that those shopping experiences, those purchase moments are, it's very hard to say this, but, fun, interesting, emotional, useful, and, have come from somewhere relevant, right? And so affiliates plays quite nicely into that because the majority of the starting journey is not necessarily on a store. It's being influenced by publishers to say, we've played with this, we've done all the research, you don't have to, trust us, buy it.
Yep.
So I think from that perspective, even if it's shifting towards AI, you're still going to need to talk to the person that the AI has scraped that data from to be able to get above the crowd to be heard. Because otherwise you're just going to be, you can see this on certain retailers where you type a name of product in and there's so much retail media around that product and every product looks the same. And you're just like, well, of course I'm not going to, I can't even find your product when I search for it. So why should I buy it even when what's making it stand out from the crowd? If it's just another, another, then you are going to get thrown to the wolves and you're going to get lost, right? But if you create something that's exciting and emotional and people want to buy it in the first place.
The publishers can create content around, I guess.
Yeah.
Bring it to new people, educate.
Yeah. And so that's a case of, then that becomes a journey and a story of what are you actually selling? Why do people need it? Why is yours better than the other? What's the differentiating, the point about it that makes it special? And how do you go about telling traditional PR or not? How do you go about telling journalists, influencers, vloggers, whatever, podcasters, all the other stuff? How do you go about telling them this is the thing that they need to be shouting about because it's exciting and cool?
Yeah, which is great because that's our business.
Yeah, right. And so you're still. So I think even AI will make it easier to purchase that, but it'll also. I think, and you can see this with podcasts. Ironically, we're on a podcast, right? It's all about discovery. there are lots and lots of podcasts to go and listen to. I'm sure there's loads about this topic, right? But it's about discovery and understanding and finding that podcast and helping people understand where that podcast is to listen to it. Because then it gets discovered and you get listened and you get advice and you act on that advice and you go off and it's made your life better. So I think it's more about, in the future, the elements of storytelling will be more important, because you can't just expect to open up a Shopify store, whack a couple of products on there and expect, seed out a couple of links on a mass email to everybody that you've ever heard of from a publication and hope that you're going to go straight to the top of the queue.
Yeah. And you're right. There needs to be, if humans are the end buyer still, all right, which is, let's say we stick around and we're buying products, then humans need to be doing the reviews to actually touch and feel and use it. And that review content is what needs to be feeding any AI recommendations, because there is a debate going about AI feeding itself. And that is impossible, isn't it, when it comes to like review and comparison?
Look, we all like shopping, right? Most people. Blokes not necessarily as much, but we all like buying things, okay? But we don't like being sold to. So it's that sense of, if you can make it more exciting to buy the thing and a more reason to buy it, then you don't necessarily have to do the selling.
I'm just going to change tack now, if that's okay.
Go for it.
Because it's just something just sprung into my mind, and I'm sure you use AI in your company to help with certain things. Obviously, there's the rise of like vibe coding recently, and you've got people shipping apps and again, I think you mentioned about storytelling, and I think the same way that it relates to products, and you only buy from people who have not sold to you but told you a story. It's going to be the same thing with that as well. And there's got to be so much out there right now because of these self-coding platforms. What's your view on that?
So I think it's the same with using AI for writing. Mm-hmm. So I think the ability for you to start getting an AI to build an app for you, that's great, right? It's good. It allows people, it democratizes the barrier to entry, right? It kind of, the three of us could come up and go off and try and build something and all the other stuff. Where it starts to fall down quite quickly, I believe, is that it's building it doesn't necessarily build it the most efficient way, right? Suddenly it hasn't really thought about all the other elements in the back end. But also it doesn't necessarily know what you should be trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. So from a writing perspective, I always use it in I like writing. I'm an okay writer, but I know that when that my work would always be better once a sub-editor had worked their magic on it. Okay. Or if I'm commissioning someone else to write something in the past, they'll send it, and it's that ability to, they'll provide the copy and it's my knowledge and ability to tidy that up and make that better. And so, if I'm asking AI from a writing perspective to help, I might have written something and say, I'm struggling with this phrase or this turn of phrase or whatever. Or, could you help me with that? If it provides it, and I still have the knowledge myself to understand whether what it's given me is good or not. And so I think what you'll see is, certainly from a coding perspective, is I think the senior developers who understand how to code and understand how it all works from that point of view will start to use it more to help them with menial tasks, which is a shame because then the junior developers won't be needed and then they won't learn to become the senior developers themselves and all the other stuff. But I think the danger I see, and I know there's a couple of guys within the industry that whenever I see them, they're always like, I've coded this, I've coded that. It's like, how long did you take to do that? All right, okay. Could you have, if you'd just given it to someone else, could you have got something better quicker? So I think there's a sense of, it's good fun. The results, I've had a go with myself. The results are woefully, sometimes they're amazing. Other times they are absolutely atrocious.
Yeah.
And you then, and as a founder, as a business owner, you kind of sometimes have to understand the value of your time. Mm-hmm. And whether it's actually worth your time to be messing around trying to do this, or whether this sounds really cliche, but to leave it to the professionals.
Yeah, I mean, I went through exactly the same process, and I think as an experiment and just to understand, that new thing, that new product, that new toy. I think it's important, but I came to the same conclusion. Leave it to the professionals. They're vastly more experienced there and know-how, and my time could be better spent elsewhere.
You did some vibe coding?
Yeah.
Did you? I didn't know that. What did you make?
A couple of things.
What did you try
related to the business? Actually, funnily enough, I was trying to create like a product feed debugger, and that never made its way to Fab. By the way,
Fab's our developer, who hates vibe coding, and he's a good friend of mine. He's also our developer, and he's a very talented guy who's he was CTO of Native Ad Network, built the whole ad server from scratch. Very, very smart guy. Shout out to Fab.
Yes, but actually, there was one thing I did do, which was just a simple sort of front end interface, which I was able to then pass to him, which he was able to implement.
That made it into our hub?
Yeah.
Oh, well done.
Thank you.
I had no idea. He didn't even tell me about that.
I think that's today, right?
Yeah.
2 years' time, it probably will have the same conversation. It'll be like, oh yeah, just, whiz this up and all the other stuff.
Well, right? Fab hates it and I thought it was hubris. And I thought it was Luddite, esque, in that, like, no computer can possibly do what I do. And so he and I've had this kind of debate going on, healthy debate for the last few years. I'm like sending him links to like clickbaity stuff saying you can just build this with AI, bro. And I'm like, Fab, do this. And he come back to me saying, you don't understand what you're talking about. And I've slowly started to realize that he's actually right, that it can put out, it's basically, it builds like a Frankenstein's monster of a code base. And like you said, it doesn't understand why it's doing it. So, but he's also using it himself in his business, but he's a experienced developer who knows what he's looking at.
Yeah, so I think let's throw it back to like the throes of DIY, okay?
Yeah.
So if I was to say to you, could you replumb your entire house, right? Put a new heating system in.
I can't even change a shower head.
Right, so you'd probably think, okay, let's watch some YouTube videos. Let's read some Reddit posts on the internet.
Yeah.
And I've got a rough idea that pipe should go from there to there and it connects to something like that and we can have a go. But you'd probably find that let's say even the being the kindest person we are, that you've managed to do this, okay?
Okay, that's very kind.
Then something happens and a professional comes in and they be like, wow, like, what's this like crazy thing that's been built here? Because why don't you just go from there to there? Like, you've got all the way around the house, around this, all the other stuff. And so I think it's that same thing, right? You will get there.
That's a great analogy.
If you're trying to do it. But will it be the most efficient way to do it? Will it be the best way to do it? Will it have saved you will it save you time by doing it? I think, again, coming back to this, founder stuff, running a business, one of the greatest assets you can have as a founder is understanding when you're really good at something, but also when you're not the best person in the room to do that job, and then to outsource it to someone that is better than you so you can concentrate on what you're good at. At the moment, I would put myself in that column of not very good at coding. I've done it in the past, but not very good at coding. And so therefore, me trying to understand and waste time on vibe coding doesn't make sense for the business in any way, shape or form.
Definitely. And I'd add to that as well by saying that, yes, so understanding when you're not the right person for the job, but there's another layer to the founder thing, which I'm going through because I'm a salesperson by trade and have been for 16, 17 years, and I love it. There's nothing better than getting off of a meeting with a pro. We have to bleep this out, but we just started working with right, and that meeting, that first meeting when it went so well. I was just like, the dopamine is outrageous, So I really enjoy it. And the thing that I've heard is that you've got to, as a founder, as your business grows like ours is, you've got to let go. You've got to stop doing the things that you enjoy if someone else can actually do it.
No, I disagree with that. But
you disagree? What do you mean?
I disagree in the fact that what you're talking about is founder-led sales, which is very hard to replicate because you probably will be the best person in your business to do the sales because you're the founder, right? So from that point of view, I wouldn't worry about that.
It's more about letting go of the stuff that you enjoy, right?
So I don't think it's that either. That's the whole point of being a founder is if you enjoy it and you're good at it, then it's fine, right?
But if I'm needed on like management accounts, a week of like stuff without, CFO and Jamie and I are working out this US expansion and there's other things that the people in the sales team can't do that only me and Jamie can do, then I have to not be on those sales calls.
Well, that's just about juggling. That's just about spinning plates.
I suppose the comparison for you would be like you're a journalist and writing, right? And as Pocket-Lint grew, you can write all the stories. or the articles, sorry.
Are we back recording or are we still off recording?
Oh, we're still recording.
Okay, that's fine. You said you wanted to bleep it out. So
No, I was just bleeping
I
was going to bleep out that word because I probably shouldn't be name dropping.
Right.
No, we're good. But yeah, when you were a journalist for Pocket-Lint, right? But also you were running a business that was getting bigger and bigger, and so you probably enjoyed journalism, but like I've heard, and maybe you disagree, but I've heard that as a business scales, you need to be replacing yourself at different levels, right? As the business grows, you end up with a sales department, then you need to have really talented salespeople that can kind of grow into new territories and be closing loads of deals. But I just want to be in there, like in amongst it, doing that stuff,
so to speak.
But then there's things that I need to work on that no one else can.
Yeah, I think it's understanding. So I used to be, it's about putting yourself where you're good, right? And where you can bring the most level of value to what's happening at that moment in time. Turns out if I concentrate on running the business, we did really well.
Yeah.
There was a point where I used to go to events and, the team would shout at me because they'd be like, where's the copy for this? Where's that copy? Where's this copy? And I'm like, I'm working as fast as I can, but I got this other stuff. And they're like, if you can't do it, then you can't go, because we would send someone else and they would do it. And so you've got to make that decision. And it becomes very obvious sometimes when if I would go to an event, I'd manage to get a couple of thousand words out, where we'd send our features editor and she would get 10,000 words out, multiple stories, all the other stuff, because that's all she had to focus on to do. Where I'm kind of having sales meetings and dev meetings and CEO, SEO meetings and all the other stuff. So if you can't do the job that you're being sent to do, then you shouldn't do it, right? You should send someone else. And sometimes it's a tough decision to make, because you like doing that bit, but ultimately, if it's not good enough for the business, and you'd be shouting at you for not delivering what needs to be delivered, then you shouldn't be in the room.
Yeah.
And so that's sometimes it's just the case. That's just the way it is, right? You have to live with it and move on. But I think it's that, there's no point for Squirrel. The stuff that we're doing from a development point of view is so, is mind-boggling, and the numbers that we're dealing with and all the other stuff and the capabilities that we're offering publishers that we work with and stuff is, no matter how much I fancied getting into coding or vibe coding or anything of that nature, I am 100% not the right person to do. Everything else, commercial side, all the other side, and then that's fine. I can do that, so that's great, and I am the best person in the business to do that. Are there better people that I could hire in to do an even better job of me? Yes, of course there are. But it's at the journey that at the moment we are in, I'm currently doing the bits that I'm good at doing, and so that makes sense for me to be in those roles.
Yes.
As the business grows, it might be that we hire someone that is, and you should always hire to replace you, make yourself redundant as the founder, but also hire to fill in the gaps that you have in your knowledge base or your skill set or whatever, because then you just, as a business, you get better.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's no point, it's all very well trying to hire another me, but I know all the problems I bring. I don't need dose in double, so from that point of view.
You better be, guys, this is going to be me, just you saying something really, really pertinent and then me giving a cliche summary, but that's the, A players hire B players, B players hire A players, etc. Yeah, you got to find people better than you. We're quite lucky that we're surrounded by people way smarter than us now in certain areas.
That's living the dream, right?
Yeah, in many key areas.
And now they're all off at the events, and they're doing all the business probably better than maybe we could.
Especially at publisher level. Like they have the relationships now that Jamie was sort of working in the first year of RevWise. It was us two running around like lunatics for the first 6 months. I would bring the clients in and he would keep them. And then, sort of like scaled that. But Squirrel's been going for like 4 years, is it?
So we've been going, because we started it within Pocket-Lint, and then effectively we kind of made a real go of it from a commercial point of view, working with other publishers from 22. So it's like coming up to 4 years.
Yeah. What's been the most exciting moment so far in terms of a win? Talk about that dopamine hit when a business is going well.
I think it's trying to solve things that we struggled with, to solve at the beginning, or it's that, as I said, it's a constant momentum. So there's always wins, guys. There's always wins. But no, it's getting a customer, getting a publisher to believe that you can actually make a difference, and then them realizing that you can make a difference. And then when it comes for the contract renewal, them saying, yes, we can see that you're making a difference. We want to continue working with you. So it's almost sometimes it's that first contract win is great and exciting because you're like, yeah, they're going to work with us. And then to me, it's always that year 2 where, they've realized that you are making a difference. That they want to keep going, which is exciting, right?
Because that's very well put. I think that probably sums up how we feel often.
It's like ultimate validation, because it's like, okay, in the first step, they had faith in you and what you've built to actually come on board and give you a shot, but then to actually stay with you long term and it compounds. It's like that's even more valid.
And so we're starting to see quite a few of our publishers, when the contracts are renewing, are actually then, it comes up for renew, they are saying, yeah, that's great, or we want to expand what we do with you. Last year we launched Insights, which is it's basically a revenue tracking solution for your pages, so you can see which networks are making you money, which pages are generating revenue for publishers, even down to author level. This author is really good at writing content that people click through and buy from, compared to this author maybe. So what, not necessarily call them out, but why is this one more successful than that? So, we're constantly innovating, creating new technologies and new tools for the publishers. But I think that to me, it's the great bits are when, you get off or even you get a call coming from another publisher saying, oh, this publisher has recommended that we talk to you. And you're like, okay, that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. Well, I think I hit you up on Slack or something. I don't think you want to name names, but there was a very major publisher that uses you that we work with, that I happened to met up with, and they were just absolutely raving about it. About Squirrel,
which is always good, right?
Which is very good. And I came straight back and told you, and you're like, cool. Always nice. It's always nice to get your flowers.
Yes, indeed. So, where should we go next?
Quick fire round.
Quick fire.
My goodness.
We're going to do our best Stephen Bartlett impression.
Okay.
Try and make you cry. So,
so we'll start with the 12-year-old one.
Yeah. You've done a lot of stuff, and I actually didn't get through your whole bio, like the bio that I'd written for you at the beginning, because I was worried about me talking for 2 minutes uninterrupted. But you really have. Like you said, early days at Amazon. You started a successful publisher that was global. Then you exited that business. You've started a new one that's going very well and is cutting edge and a sort of bit of a blue ocean, really. I mean, I'm going to say it so you don't have to. I know you're very humble, but what would your 12-year-old self say about where you are today and who you are today?
So I think that's a really tough one. Probably like, oh my God, you're old. You've done all right, I suppose. You're on the way to achieving something, maybe. Just, constantly pushing forward. I think, 12-year-olds are 12-year-olds.
Yeah,
right?
well, what about maybe a more relevant age would be like 18, maybe when you left school or left university, like when you actually might have had a better idea of where you thought you would go.
Yeah, I think it's hard because, the world changes so quickly. When I started work, like one of the first stories I covered was the launch of Google. Because it was this new kid on the block that was going to take over Alta Vista and Yahoo. Isn't that exciting? And Ask Jeeves.
I remember Jeeves. That was my go-to, Ask Jeeves.
So from that perspective, then, we saw the .com bust, and then the boom, and then the bust, and then the rise again. And then, technology has changed so much. Let's say from a hardware point of view, I was writing about graphics cards and sound cards. I mean, could you imagine, right? Like a new sound card is going to make your PC sound more exciting today. It's like it's something that's just expected, right? So I think it's that. I'm glad my 18-year-old self would probably say, "Oh, so you're still here? You're still fighting the fight, doing the stuff." And it's very easy to throw out crazy cliches and, slogans for a poster and believe and all this kind of stuff. But I think, I'm glad I'm still here, still in the game. Cool. People are still listening.
I also imagine that 18-year-old Stuart was probably a tech nerd then as well. And he might have been pretty excited that you've had all this access and been to be able to do what you enjoy.
Yeah, that was good fun.
Which is pretty cool. What advice would you give to your younger self?
My younger self?
Yeah, so when you first started your career, what advice could you give?
I think it's just be true, be honest. It's that, if you, I'm a great believer. If you're a nice guy and you tell the truth and you don't, you treat other people like you want to be treated. Then that's going to work, right?
It's so important. And even you and I, we had dealings together a decade ago.
Yeah.
And you were always great. Even when I
that's
cold
the thing,
called
you
you.
never know.
Called you. So I've been cold calling you to can we get a decision on putting this ads on your site? And I think it was for quite a while. I don't until we actually ended up working together. But you were always very, very nice.
I think you just never know when that person's going to come up in your life again. So I remember at university going for a job interview with this guy at a bar, and he gave me a job, and I worked in his bar for a night. And it was in a club, and it was horrible. It was like picking up broken glass from the floor. It was like one of those real bad dives in Southampton. And that was it. I was like, I'm really sorry. This is not for me. And he was like, yeah, I didn't think it would be, but oh well, never mind, right? And I kind of knew of him, but that was pretty much it. About 15 years later, I was in a bar in New York at a networking event, and I met this guy. And it's the same guy. And we're sitting there talking, and we're just, where did you go to university? Oh, we went to the same place, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what? Like, we must know each other. Like, this has been really weird. And it transpired that he'd given me a job in this bar, and I stayed a night and all the other stuff, right? We then became friends, what have you. He's now the chair of the impact board of the university that I went to. He's just asked me to join his impact board. And so I'm now on my university impact board 30 years later, advising them about curriculum, advising them about brand identity, and about all this kind of stuff. And it's like this weird sort of journey of, had I been a complete, asshole or whatever at the beginning, had we not, you just don't know who you're going to end up talking to. So if you're just, it sounds hard, but if you're just nice to people all the time.
Well, I think we've got a Stephen Bartlett type answer, right?
It's a good MO, but I really know that I know that you believe that, and that you, and I know that you're right. And that is such a good MO for life. And it's so easily overlooked because it sounds so simple, but just be nice. I've got it tattooed on my knee, actually. On my knee, I've got a tattoo that says "Be nice."
Okay, is that when you need people in?
Yes, it's just
kicking them in, kneeing them in the ribs or something. It's just be nice.
It's just a reminder, but no, I think it's a good MO. Put you on the spot now. Finish this sentence. Leadership is.
It's about empowering your team. It's about basically being the snowplow to get all the rubbish out of their way so they can do their job.
I think that's
a good one.
Yeah, very good one. Should we go for one final one?
Yeah, go on, mate.
Yeah. So what's the single biggest opportunity that most brands are missing out on right now?
Talking to people.
Direct outreach?
I think it's just some of the best relationships I've got with press, like PR teams over the years that when I was a journalist were when I was meeting them when there wasn't a launch. Mm-hmm. And so it's that touch point, once a quarter, every 6 months or whatever, just having a coffee. There's no launch, there's no agenda, just talking to people, because going out and doing that will generate ideas, will generate opportunities. And I just don't, people just don't do it. When I sold Pocket-Lint, I was very fortunate I didn't have to do an earn out. So I was out in 10 days. Really weird, right?
That's very
very strange. And I was a bit lost because I'd suddenly gone from this, very big job, 100 miles an hour, 24/7, running, for 20 years, all the other stuff. And I was kind of out. And it was good. I wanted to be out, and it was, that was fine. It was all on my own making, so to speak. A really good friend of mine said, "We just you've got the time and you've got the means, so just go and have lunch, drinks, cocktails, coffee, whatever, with just people. Like if you can, once a week, if not once in 2 weeks, whatever. Just phone them up and say, I'll come to you. Let's have a drink." And I started doing that. A bit weird phoning someone up saying, let's have a meet up? No agenda. They're like, well, there must be an agenda.
What does this guy want? Yeah.
What does this guy want? It's like, no, let's just have a chat. I haven't spoken to you for a while. We've not fallen off the radar, but, some of the people I hadn't seen for 10 years, some people I'd seen like 3 weeks beforehand, right? So, and it's just the amount of opportunities or help, or like not just for me, but for them or anything else that just came out of it from talking to people it was amazing. And I still try and, I don't do it every week now, but I still try and meet up with people as often as I can, just to have a coffee, even just a beer or whatever, right? Just to chew the fat, just to talk stuff, because you then go, oh, what about this? Or we could do that. And have you thought about that? And oh, I've got this, I'm struggling with this. What about if you did this? And then that would work there. And then like, oh, you've just solved a problem that I'm really struggling with or something like that. So it's not like that I'm coming in to solve all your problems, but it's the let's have a chat and just see where the conversation goes. And I think that a lot of people, they're so busy, they're so results focused. It's every conversation has to have an outcome. Every, it's got to be a performance chart. It's got to be this. It's got to be that. It sometimes doesn't have to be that way. And sometimes those relationships will grow. They'll then come to you with ideas. I've got this idea, but we really want to work out how to put that product in there. Or I've got this great solution for like a running series where we could feature these products and it's about how to do this or whatever. Suddenly all these ideas come and the results come anyway.
I was just thinking to myself there, why IRL is so much more impactful. And then I realized it's the theme of this entire chat. It actually loops right back to that, which is trust. You spend time in someone's physical presence and you really know them. And then when you've got something you want advice on, if you've got an opportunity that you need someone to work on, you're connecting dots, you need someone who you trust. That person's, you're going to be high up each other's lists if you've had real life. So it really is everything, isn't it?
Cool. I think that's probably a good point to end on. So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stuart,
for sharing so much.
Really appreciate it. And see, you got a little bit way through your milkshake there. I'm
going to hardly touch mine.
It's good. I like it. It's great. Banana.
Good. We can take home.
We'll
see you soon. We're at a coffee meet up in town.
Cheers. Thanks.